Welcome to the Urban Herald. Today, as part of the Urban Herald team, we're embarking on a really extensive deep dive into the September 11 attacks. It's 2025 now, 24 years, 24 years after a day that just profoundly reshapes the 21st century. And what's immediately clear, looking through all the material you've shared with us, is that the initial tragedy, the images we all remember, while it's still dominant in our collective memory, it's really only the beginning. It's the start of a far more expansive and crucially ongoing narrative. We're looking beyond that immediate devastation today, trying to uncover the long-term reverberations.
Indeed. Yeah, when we really scrutinize the sources you've gathered, what truly stands out, I think, is how even the most established facts, the things we thought we knew, are being continuously reevaluated, not just historically, but through the lens of their long-term, still unfolding impact. So our mission today as guides from the Urban Herald team is to meticulously explore both what is definitively known, the established record, and also the persistent uncertainties, the questions that continue to define the 9/11 legacy, especially for you, our listener, as you seek maybe a richer, deeper understanding of this pivotal moment.
And this journey into the legacy of 9/11, it's going to take us into some truly unexpected and, frankly, quite heartbreaking territory. We'll examine what many people now are calling the silent epidemic, that staggering reality of 9/11-related illnesses, which have tragically grown now to exceed the original death toll.
That's such a critical point. It reshapes our entire perception of the attacks, doesn't it? And beyond that, we'll also analyze the profound geopolitical transformations that followed 9/11, the unprecedented expansion of governmental power, too, and the complex, often really unintended consequences of the global war on terror that fundamentally altered America's place in the world.
Yeah, and we'll also have to confront the critical battle against misinformation, particularly in this digital age, how it challenges our collective memory, our understanding of these events. But amidst all of this complexity, we promise to amplify the powerful, really resilient voices of survivors and first responders. They remind us of the human spirit right at the very heart of this unfinished story. Okay, let's unpack this. The phrase silent epidemic really jumped out at me in your notes. When we initially think of 9/11, the immediate images flood our minds. The collapsing towers, the smoke everywhere, the chaos. That's the vivid, immediate tragedy. But 2 decades later, your sources highlight a shocking and really somber reality. We are now grappling with what's being called America's deadliest occupational health disaster. It's a slow-burning crisis unfolding year after year. So let's begin by really digging into this aspect.
It's a profound shift in the narrative, isn't it? The immediate catastrophic event, horrific as it was, has gradually, almost insidiously, morphed into this public health crisis that just continues to escalate. This reveals a truly overlooked aspect of the attack's legacy, moving beyond the single act of terror to its systemic, slow-burning impact on human health and well-being. It really asks us to redefine what a casualty of 9/11 actually means.
And it all began, really, with that toxic legacy at ground zero. The collapse of the World Trade Center wasn't just a structural failure. It was an unprecedented environmental catastrophe on an epic scale. Lower Manhattan, that vibrant hub, was just instantly engulfed in this lethal, suffocating mixture of pulverized building materials and burning debris. We're talking about a cocktail that included asbestos, lead, microscopic glass fibers, concrete dust, jet fuel residue, and your sources say over 400 other hazardous materials, all aerosolized, just hanging in the air. It's genuinely difficult to fully grasp the sheer volume and toxicity of that cloud.
And this leads us to a crucial and, well, tragically misinformed early pronouncement. Your sources remind us of the Environmental Protection Agency's initial statement, issued very shortly after the attacks, declaring that the air was safe to breathe. This pronouncement, as we now know with absolute certainty, was tragically premature, utterly wrong. It had a lasting and devastating impact, providing this false sense of security that prompted countless individuals, including thousands of first responders, downtown workers, residents, even students, to return to the area. They were unknowingly exposing themselves to this incredibly dangerous environment for, extended periods. This initial misinformation directly contributed to the current scale of the ongoing health crisis.
And what a crisis it's become. This isn't just some historical footnote. Your sources make it unequivocally clear that this is a crisis that continues to escalate even today, 24 years later. More than 500,000 people were exposed to these toxins. Think about that number, 500,000 people. It wasn't just the heroic first responders, though they undoubtedly bore the brunt of it. It was also the downtown workers trying to restart their businesses, residents returning to their homes, students going back to school, and the dedicated cleanup crews working tirelessly down there. These were all individuals simply trying to navigate the aftermath and get on with their lives in the weeks and months after the attacks.
The World Trade Center Health Program, which was established specifically to address this crisis, is really a testament to an ongoing societal commitment, thankfully. As of 2025, your figures show it has enrolled over 135,000 individuals. And the health impacts, as your sources detail, are proving far more severe and long-lasting than anyone could have possibly anticipated back then. The statistics are truly staggering. Cancer cases have now reached 51,200 and the monumental 155% increase just since 2019 alone. It's a dramatic acceleration in diagnoses, highlighting the long latency period of many of these diseases.
To put a human face on these numbers, your material shares the testimony of Sarah Chen. She was a financial analyst who worked in the South Tower, and thankfully, she evacuated that morning. Years later, though, in 2019, she developed thyroid cancer. She recounts, and I'm quoting here, "I thought I was lucky to survive that day. I never imagined the real danger would come years later. The doctors say my cancer is directly linked to the toxins I breathed in the weeks after returning to work downtown." Mia. Her story's just. It's not unique. It's one of many thousands of individuals facing this delayed, insidious impact.
hmm And the range of cancers now definitively linked to 9/11 exposure is broad and deeply concerning. The most common types include prostate, skin, breast, thyroid, kidney, lung, and bladder cancers, also melanoma, lymphoma, and leukemia. It's a long and devastating list. But perhaps the most heartbreaking revelation from your sources concerns the mortality statistics. More than 8,300 people enrolled in the WTC health program have now died due to 9/11-related illnesses. That includes 6,100 responders. And these deaths now significantly exceed the 2,977 immediate fatalities on September 11 itself. It's a profound and truly somber shift in the narrative of loss. It demonstrates the ongoing escalating nature of this tragedy.
It really does change our perception of the ultimate toll, doesn't it? Maria Rodriguez Walsh, whose father, firefighter Michael Rodriguez, spent months tirelessly at Ground Zero. He tragically lost his battle with lung disease in 2023. She shared a profoundly moving quote with us from your material. She recalled, "Before he died, my dad told me we didn't know we were trading our lives for that pile of rubble. He thought he was saving people, but the pile was killing him slowly." Her words just paint such a vivid and agonizing picture of the ultimate sacrifice, one that unfolded over 2 decades for him.
And as you mentioned earlier, it's the first responders who truly bear the heaviest burden in this unfolding health crisis. The data is stark. The Fire Department of New York, the FDNY, has now lost over 370 members to 9/11-related illnesses. That number starkly surpasses the 343 firefighters who died on the actual day of the attacks. Similarly, the New York Police Department, the NYPD, has confirmed over 320 deaths from these same diseases. And disturbingly, these numbers continue their monthly ascent, underscoring the relentless nature of this silent epidemic. It's still claiming lives.
Retired SDNY Captain James Murphy, he's a 9/11 survivor himself, now living with multiple cancers. He offered a poignant perspective that really captures the sentiment of so many. He stated, "We went there to save lives, and we did. But nobody told us we were sacrificing our own. The brothers we lost that day died as heroes. The ones dying now are dying forgotten heroes." It's a stark, powerful reminder of the long shadow cast by that day and, well, the ongoing fight for recognition and support for these individuals.
Yet, amidst this truly tragic data, your sources reveal something quite remarkable, almost paradoxical insight. Research published back in 2021 indicated that 9/11 responders enrolled in the WTC health program are actually approximately 35% more likely to survive their cancers than the general population with similar cancers. Now, this remarkable finding is directly attributed to the enhanced medical monitoring and the free comprehensive treatment provided through the program. It really underscores the critical importance and the profound impact of sustained, specialized health support for disaster-affected populations. It offers perhaps a glimmer of hope amidst the immense challenges these people face.
That truly highlights the program's vital role. It's clearly saving lives, even as the illnesses continue. So while this silent health crisis relentlessly unfolds, it's really essential for us to anchor ourselves in the established facts of the day itself. To fully grasp the immense scope of 9/11's legacy, we need to trace the precise timeline of the attacks and delve into the comprehensive investigations that followed. These initial events, they're the foundation for everything that came after, right?
Precisely. Yeah, understanding the what and how of the attacks is absolutely foundational. And what your sources consistently show is how the official findings, especially from the engineering analyses and the intelligence reviews, became the bedrock for the massive national security changes and our entire approach to counterterrorism. It's crucial to see how these initial reports shaped not just our understanding, but policy decisions for decades to come.
Okay, so the attack sequence itself. It was a meticulously planned and devastating assault carried out by 19 Al-Qaeda operatives on September 11, 2001. It unfolded with just chilling speed and precision that morning. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Just 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower. Then, at 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 impacted the Pentagon over in Arlington, Virginia. And finally, at 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers, as we know, bravely attempted to regain control from the hijackers.
The immediate death toll from these coordinated attacks was 2,977 people, a number that, as we've just discussed in detail, has now been tragically surpassed by these 9/11-related illnesses. The Twin Towers collapsed quite soon after being hit 9:59 a.m. for the South Tower and 10:28 a.m. for the North Tower. And later that day, 7 World Trade Center fell at 5:20 p.m. The immediate response was unprecedented. The Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, ordered the grounding of all civilian aircraft in U.S. airspace for the first time in history. Complete shutdown. And emergency protocols were activated across the nation, beginning that reshaping of American security infrastructure that would last for decades.
Maria Santos, a survivor who miraculously escaped from the 78th floor of the South Tower, offered a powerful quote in your materials that really perfectly encapsulates the ongoing trauma. She said, "I can still smell the smoke, hear the sirens, but what haunts me most is watching friends who made it out that day die slowly from the poison we all breathed. September 11th didn't end in 2001, it's still happening." Her words just resonate so deeply, connecting the immediate terror of that morning to the enduring long-term health crisis we were just talking about.
Beyond these harrowing eyewitness accounts, the engineering and scientific analyses provided crucial understanding into why the buildings collapsed the way they did. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, that's a non-regulatory federal agency, they conduct extensive research and investigations. They undertook the most comprehensive investigation into the building collapses. Their final reports, released in 2005 for the Twin Towers and 2008 for WTC-7, concluded that the collapses resulted from a complex interplay. It wasn't just one thing. It was aircraft impact damage, widespread dislodgement of critical fireproofing material, and the subsequent intense fires that burned largely uncontrolled.
Right. So it wasn't just the initial impact, as you say, that caused the collapses, but this terrifying cascade of failures that followed. For the Twin Towers, NIST's meticulous findings revealed that the plane crashes severed and severely damaged numerous core support columns. That was the first blow. But critically, the impact also dislodged a substantial amount of the spray-on fireproofing that was designed to protect the steel structure from intense heat. With this vital protection compromised, the jet fuel-fed fires rapidly heated the exposed steel floors. These floors connected the inner core columns to the outer perimeter columns. As these steel floors heated up, they softened, they sagged under the immense load and the intense heat, and they started pulling inward on the perimeter columns. This caused the outer columns to bend, then buckle, and ultimately initiate that catastrophic progressive collapse we all witnessed, a zipper effect almost.
Exactly. And for WTC-7, the explanation, while different in the specifics, was equally rooted in fire. NIST determined that fires, which were ignited by debris raining down from the North Tower's collapse, burned uncontrolled for over 6 hours on multiple floors. This was largely due to the sprinkler systems being disabled by the initial debris impact and damage, and also a lack of immediate firefighting efforts within the severely damaged building. It just wasn't possible or safe to fight those fires effectively. These prolonged uncontrolled fires caused significant thermal expansion of steel beams and girders. Steel expands when heated right. And this expansion ultimately led to the failure of a critical support column, which in turn initiated a progressive collapse of the entire structure, similar in dynamic but different in cause to the Twin Towers. These NIST findings really form the bedrock of the engineering consensus on what happened structurally that day.
And then, of course, came the deep dive into the intelligence failures that preceded the attacks. The 9/11 Commission, established in 2002, produced a truly comprehensive 571-page report that meticulously examined the events leading up to the day. This investigation identified significant communication breakdowns between the CIA, the FBI, and other key intelligence agencies.
Precisely. The Commission pinpointed bureaucratic inertia, institutional roadblocks, and legal restrictions that, regrettably, prevented effective information sharing between these critical agencies. They weren't talking to each other properly. They famously characterized these failures as a failure of imagination by both the Clinton and Bush administrations. What they meant by that was that while various intelligence agencies possessed individual pieces of information about potential threats, scattered clues, they tragically failed to connect the dots or anticipate the unprecedented scale and nature of the planned attacks. This retrospective analysis profoundly influenced intelligence reform efforts in the years that followed, aiming specifically to dismantle such communication silos and foster better interagency cooperation.
Okay, so the immediate aftermath of 9/11 wasn't just about understanding the attacks, the what and how. It was very much about responding to them. And that response, as your sources detail so clearly, fundamentally altered global politics, international security, and American society in ways we are still grappling with today, 24 years on. Let's delve into these profound shifts now.
It's absolutely clear that the legislative and military responses initiated right after 9/11 transformed the nation's security posture and its international standing almost overnight. And this brings up a really critical question, I think. What are the long-term implications of such a rapid and expansive increase in federal power, both domestically, here at home, and globally, particularly in how it attempts to balance these urgent security imperatives with fundamental civil liberties? That tension is key.
The attacks triggered an unprecedented expansion of federal power and surveillance capabilities. It happened incredibly fast. Just 3 days after 9/11, on September 14, 2001, Congress passed the Authorization for Use of Military Force, the AUMF. This resolution granted the president incredibly broad authority to use force against those deemed responsible for 9/11. But what's crucial to understand, and your sources highlight this, is that the same AUMF became the legal foundation for military actions in at least 14 different countries over the following 2 decades. It stretched its original intent far, far beyond the initial target of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan. That's a massive and enduring expansion of executive war-making authority.
Right, and concurrently, the USA Patriot Act, signed into law just a bit later, on October 26, 2001, dramatically expanded government surveillance powers domestically. This legislation significantly increased the government's ability to monitor phone and email communications, broadened access to personal records like library or financial records, allowed for secret searches under certain conditions, and drastically reduced restrictions on information sharing between domestic law enforcement, like the FBI, and foreign intelligence agencies, like the CIA. These changes were immediate and profound. They fundamentally affected the daily lives and privacy expectations of American citizens and, of course, sparked ongoing debates about that balance between security and liberty that continue to this day.
And the implications continue to ripple through our political landscape even now. Your sources indicate that the 2024 election cycle, for example, saw renewed debates over counterterrorism funding levels and the scope of civil liberties protections. It underscores how these issues remain potent, unresolved. And for 9/11 survivors and their families, President-elect policies regarding the World Trade Center Health Program funding, specifically ensuring it remains funded through 2090 as promised, remain a key constant concern, particularly as healthcare costs continue to rise with an aging survivor population dealing with complex illnesses. It's a constant reminder that these historical events have very real, very current political stakes. We also saw that powerful memorial at Fort Bragg back in 2019, featuring over 7,000 boots, each one representing a military service member killed in action since the 9/11 attacks. Just a stark visual of the immense human cost of these policy decisions.
The initial policy response rapidly led to direct military action, of course. Operation Enduring Freedom commenced on October 7, 2001. U.S. and British forces launched bombing campaigns against Taliban and Al-Qaeda targets in Afghanistan. The invasion had clear initial aims: capture Osama bin Laden, remove the Taliban regime from power, dismantle Al-Qaeda's base of operations there, and ostensibly establish a democratic government. It was framed as a direct and swift retaliation.
But the war on terror, as it became known, quickly expanded far beyond just Afghanistan. It evolved into this sprawling global campaign. Your sources detail military interventions, drone strikes, counterinsurgency operations in Iraq, Pakistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, and other nations. It transformed from what seemed like a contained conflict against a specific group into a protracted, multi-front global engagement with shifting enemies and objectives.
And the financial and human costs associated with this have been truly staggering, just astronomical. Estimates for the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts alone range from $4 to $6 trillion. That's trillion with a T. And in terms of human life, more than 900,000 people have died from direct war violence, according to the figures in your materials, with several million more deaths directly attributable to the broader indirect effects of these conflicts, things like displacement leading to famine or disease, lack of access to health care, the breakdown of societal infrastructure. It's a colossal, almost incomprehensible toll that continues to reverberate across multiple regions.
Looking at the current counterterrorism challenges, your sources note that the 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan marked the end of America's longest war, a significant moment. Yet many experts argue that the terrorist threat hasn't necessarily diminished, but has become more complex and diffuse, spread out. The number of designated terrorist organizations globally has exploded, increasing from approximately 10 around 2001 to over 70 today. And meanwhile, domestic extremism, right here within Western countries, has emerged as an equally pressing, perhaps even more immediate concern for law enforcement and intelligence agencies. This shift from a singular, identifiable enemy like Al-Qaeda in 2001 to this multifaceted, often decentralized threat landscape presents an entirely new and complex set of challenges for national security today. Okay, so amidst these vast global shifts and the sobering statistics of the ongoing health crisis, your sources highlight something truly remarkable: the incredible, often revolutionary work being done on the health front. The World Trade Center Health Program isn't just a response mechanism. It's become, in many ways, a living laboratory of medical discovery, offering invaluable lessons for all of us in disaster preparedness and long-term care. Let's explore this crucial area a bit more.
It's truly compelling, isn't it? How this immense tragedy has inadvertently driven a revolution in occupational health and cancer treatment. It's really setting a new, unprecedented standard for disaster response and sustained public health commitment. And this raises an important question for us. What specific insights can this comprehensive program offer about long-term public health commitments and personalized care for populations exposed to environmental toxins or mass trauma? Its lessons, I think, extend far beyond just the 9/11 context.
The World Trade Center Health Program truly represents one of the most comprehensive occupational health monitoring systems ever established anywhere in the world. It's massive in scope. It provides medical monitoring and treatment for over 80 certified health conditions that are directly related to 9/11 exposure. And crucially, thanks to the permanent reauthorization of the James Zadroga Act back in 2019, it's funded through the year 2090. This long-term bipartisan commitment is absolutely vital for illnesses that can have such incredibly long latency periods, showing up decades later.
Dr. Rachel Zygowens, who directs the FDNY World Trade Center Health Program, emphasizes this exact point in your sources. She stated, quote, "What we've learned from monitoring 9/11 responders has revolutionized our understanding of toxic exposure in occupational health. This population has become a living laboratory that's helping us develop better treatments for cancer, respiratory disease, and PTSD." End quote. This really speaks to the incredible scientific and medical output that has emerged, paradoxically, from this tragic event, benefiting not just 9/11 victims, but potentially broader public health understanding.
And the medical advances are genuinely significant. Your sources detail the development of targeted cancer screening protocols. These have improved early detection rates by an impressive 40%, catching cancers at earlier, more treatable stages. That's huge. They've also pioneered innovative respiratory treatments specifically designed for what's called World Trade Center lung disease, a unique and challenging condition caused by that toxic dust. The program has also made significant strides in mental health integration programs, addressing the incredibly complex interactions between physical trauma, chronic illness, and psychological well-being, like PTSD. And on top of all that, they're conducting groundbreaking genomic research initiatives, trying to identify genetic markers that might predict who is more susceptible to certain illnesses or how they might respond to treatment. That's really at the forefront of personalized medicine.
What's also really notable is the program's adaptability, particularly in expanding its recognition of covered health conditions. It's not static. It continuously evolves, adding new conditions to its list as robust scientific research emerges and the causal connections become clearer over time. Recent additions, for example, include several rare cancers and various autoimmune conditions that previously were not definitively linked to 9/11 exposure. This demonstrates an ongoing commitment to following the science and ensuring comprehensive patient care.
Right, so this means the science is truly still evolving. We might not even know the full picture yet. Your sources highlight that scientists are actively investigating potential connections between 9/11 exposure and neurological conditions, like early onset dementia or Parkinson's-like symptoms. They're also looking at additional autoimmune diseases and other illnesses that might emerge decades after the initial exposure. It's a really sobering thought that even now, 24 years later, the full health impact may still not be completely understood or fully manifested in the affected population. The story is still unfolding medically. So even with the established facts about the attacks themselves and this incredible medical progress in treating the consequences, not every question from that day or about its planning is fully answered. Your sources indicate that some crucial aspects remain under investigation or are subjects of ongoing legal battles, raising critical questions about accountability and justice that persist to this day. Let's delve into some of these unresolved areas.
Absolutely. These unresolved legal and investigative threads really underscore the enduring quest for full truth and justice. not just for historians, but especially for the victims' families, and for you, our listener, trying to get the complete picture. And this brings to mind a vital question for us to consider. How do we, as a society, balance national security needs, the imperative to protect classified information, with the fundamental right of victims and the public to seek comprehensive accountability for such a monumental tragedy? It's a constant tension that continues to play out in courtrooms and government debates.
While recent document declassifications, according to your sources, have certainly renewed focus on what some believe are unanswered aspects regarding potential support networks for the hijackers, particularly within the United States, families of 9/11 victims are actively continuing to pursue civil litigation against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for instance. They argue that certain Saudi officials or individuals connected to the government provided assistance, financial or logistical, to some of the hijackers while they were in the U.S. preparing for the attacks. These cases are really about seeking accountability beyond just the 19 hijackers and Osama bin Laden's direct Al-Qaeda network. They're looking for other state or non-state actors who may have enabled the plot.
Carrie Strada, who chairs a prominent group called 9/11 Families and Survivors United for Justice Against Terrorism, expressed this sentiment very powerfully. She stated, quote, "We're not conspiracy theorists. We're families who lost loved ones, and we deserve to know the truth about who helped these terrorists. The FBI's own documents share there were people in this country who assisted the hijackers." This advocacy highlights the deep, unwavering desire for transparency and a complete understanding of all involved parties. And your sources confirm that the FBI's main investigation into the attacks, codenamed PNDT bomb, officially remains open. The families are continually pressing for additional declassified documents that might shed further light on these potential connections.
And then there are the legal proceedings against the alleged masterminds themselves. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and others held at Guantanamo Bay. The military tribunal proceedings there, which were intended to bring swift justice, have instead been plagued by extraordinary delays and severe legal complications. A major issue has been the use of so-called enhanced interrogation techniques during their interrogations years ago.
Yes, this is a critical point that has significantly hampered the pursuit of justice in those specific cases. Evidence obtained through those techniques, which are widely characterized as torture by human rights groups and many legal experts, has been deemed inadmissible in the military commissions, creating immense challenges for the prosecution teams. So, more than 2 decades after the attacks, the legal proceedings against the alleged plot architects remain incomplete, stalled in pretrial motions. This raises profound questions about the effectiveness, the fairness, and ultimately the legitimacy of the military tribunal system itself, especially when fundamental human rights considerations become central to the legal process. It's a complex and deeply frustrating aspect of the 9/11 legal legacy.
Now, as we've meticulously explored the established facts from NIST and the 9/11 Commission, and looked at these ongoing investigations and legal battles, we also have to confront a challenging reality. For some people, these official explanations simply aren't enough. We're talking about the persistence of alternative theories, often labeled as conspiracy theories, that continue to circulate and, for some, gain traction online and elsewhere. This is a significant aspect of the 9/11 narrative we have to address.
It truly is. And what's compelling here from a social science perspective is understanding the psychological and social drivers behind the stubborn persistence of these theories. Why do they stick around, even in the face of overwhelming scientific consensus and extensive debunking efforts? This prompts a crucial question for us. How do we, as a society, effectively distinguish between legitimate inquiry and critical questioning on one hand, which is healthy, and unsubstantiated conspiratorial thinking on the other? Especially when addressing complex, emotionally charged historical events like 9/11. Where is that line?
Right. On the engineering front, while the vast majority of the professional engineering community has reached a strong consensus on the collapse mechanisms of the World Trade Center towers and WTC-7 based on the NIST reports and other analyses, your sources do acknowledge that some technical questions persist for certain groups, often outside the mainstream. An example cited is a 2019 study by researchers at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It was funded by a group called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. This study controversially concluded that fire did not cause WTC-7 to collapse, directly contradicting NIST's official findings.
Yes, but it's absolutely vital to provide the context and the counterpoint to that study. This particular Fairbanks study has not undergone the rigorous process of peer review by mainstream engineering journals. That's a critical step in validating scientific work. And crucially, its conclusions remain well outside the broad scientific consensus shared by the overwhelming majority of structural engineers and fire science experts. NIST's conclusions, which we detailed earlier regarding fire-induced failure due to thermal expansion, have been validated through extensive computer modeling, rigorous physical testing of steel components under fire conditions, and corroboration by multiple independent investigations from highly reputable organizations like the American Society of Civil Engineers, AEC. This rigorous, multifaceted scientific process is what underpins the established engineering understanding for the vast majority of experts in the field.
So why do these alternative theories persist so stubbornly then, despite that scientific consensus? Dr. Karen Douglas, a professor of social psychology at the University of Kent who studies conspiracy beliefs, offers some powerful insights in your material. She explains, and I'm quoting again, conspiracy theories about 9/11 persist because they offer simple explanations for complex, frightening events, they provide a sense of control or understanding in a chaotic world, and they fulfill deep psychological needs for meaning and identifying blame. The internet has amplified these beliefs exponentially, creating echo chambers where alternative narratives flourish unchecked. It's a potent combination of human psychology needing answers and digital platforms providing spaces for those non-mainstream answers to spread.
Exactly. And research also indicates, as your sources convey, that belief in 9/11 conspiracy theories often correlates with broader psychological tendencies toward conspiratorial thinking in general. It also correlates with lower levels of political trust, sometimes lower levels of formal education, and interestingly, higher levels of authoritarianism, a preference for strong, simple answers from authority figures, even if those figures are promoting conspiracies. These beliefs, as Dr. Douglas noted, have proven remarkably persistent despite extensive debunking efforts by scientific bodies, government agencies, and journalists over the years. It highlights the deep-seated nature of these thought patterns and the real challenges in effectively countering them once they take root.
Okay, just to quickly address some of the key conspiracy theory claims that consistently resurface and the scientific responses from your sources. First, the controlled demolition theory, the idea that explosives secretly brought down the towers. Scientific analysis consistently shows that the collapse patterns, the way the debris fell, the speed of the collapse, and the acoustic signatures recorded are all entirely consistent with progressive structural failure due to the unique combination of aircraft impact damage and widespread fires. There's simply no credible physical evidence of pre-planted explosives.
Secondly, the inside job allegations, the claim that elements within the U.S. government either allow the attacks to happen or actively participated. The 9/11 Commission and subsequent extensive investigations, including FBI and intelligence reviews, found absolutely no credible evidence of government complicity. Plus, the logistical requirements for such a vast, intricate conspiracy involving thousands of people would be impossibly complex to execute and then conceal perfectly for over 2 decades.
Third, the Pentagon missile theory. The idea that a missile, not Flight 77, hit the Pentagon. This is definitively contradicted by physical evidence found at the scene, including aircraft parts and the black boxes, extensive eyewitness testimony from hundreds of people on the ground and in the air, and flight data recorder information, all confirming that American Airlines Flight 77, a hijacked Boeing 757, struck the building.
And finally, regarding the WTC-7 questions, which often focus on its symmetrical, rapid collapse. As we detailed earlier, NIST's thorough, peer-reviewed investigation demonstrated that uncontrolled fires, burning for hours due to lack of water for sprinklers, caused critical thermal expansion and the buckling failure of a key structural column. This initiated a progressive collapse sequence that brought the building down vertically, which is entirely consistent with established engineering principles for that type of structural failure under those specific fire conditions. No explosives were needed to explain it.
The digital age has just fundamentally changed how 9/11 is remembered and discussed, hasn't it? Especially for younger generations who have absolutely no personal memory of the day itself. The rise of social media, YouTube, alternative information sources. It presents unique, complex challenges for educators and, frankly, for our collective memory and understanding of these pivotal events. Let's explore this impact.
It's undeniable. The Internet's role in amplifying alternative narratives, including the conspiracy theories we just discussed, fundamentally challenges our ability to maintain a shared, fact-based understanding of historical events. It makes consensus harder to achieve and maintain. And this raises a crucial question for us to consider as a society. How do we effectively foster critical media literacy skills in a world saturated with digital content, especially for younger generations who have no personal memory of these events and are often encountering them for the very first time online through potentially unreliable sources? It's a massive challenge that permeates our educational systems and civic life.
It's a significant cultural shift, for sure. Your sources highlight that conspiracy theories about 9/11 began appearing online literally within hours of the attacks back in 2001. They didn't take long to emerge, and they have only proliferated across digital platforms since then. The most persistent theories, as we just discussed, claims of controlled demolition, government complicity, alternative explanations for the Pentagon attack, are often presented with slick production values. They look professional, and they circulate constantly across social media feeds, YouTube algorithms, and online forums.
Yeah, a notable historical example mentioned in your materials that illustrates this dynamic was a public debate back in 2006. It was between James Fetzer, a prominent promoter of 9/11 conspiracy theories, and David Dunbar, who was then an editor at Popular Mechanics magazine, which had published a major debunking piece. This exchange really highlighted how proponents of alternative theories often exploit gaps in public understanding of complex subjects like engineering and physics, presenting simplified, often misleading or flawed arguments that sound plausible to a layperson. Conversely, mainstream experts can sometimes struggle to communicate complex technical information effectively and engagingly to general audiences, inadvertently creating a vacuum that misinformation can readily fill. It's a communication challenge.
And this creates immense educational challenges in the digital age. Educators universally report increasing difficulties in teaching accurate, fact-based information about 9/11 to students who have no personal memory of the events themselves. They weren't alive when it happened or were too young to remember, so their first exposure is often through these unregulated online channels, not a textbook or a teacher.
Right. The proliferation of misinformation online has created what teachers consistently describe as a growing and serious problem in combating conspiracy theories right there in the classroom. Jennifer Williams, a high school history teacher in Ohio, shared a poignant example with us from your sources. She said, quote, "Students come to class having watched YouTube videos claiming the government blew up the towers. They've seen slick documentaries that look professional and convincing. It's heartbreaking to see young people believe such harmful nonsense about this tragedy. It poses a profound challenge to historical accuracy and critical thinking."
And it's a compounding factor that many students encounter these alternative narratives through social media algorithms or peer sharing before they receive any formal, structured education about the attacks in school. The misinformation gets there first. To try and address this, educational initiatives are now increasingly including media literacy components. These are specifically designed to help students critically evaluate sources, understand rhetorical strategies used online, spot logical fallacies, and distinguish between legitimate historical questions and unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. It's becoming an absolutely essential skill for navigating the modern information landscape, not just for 9/11, but for everything. Okay, moving beyond the domestic changes and the information landscape, your sources also detail how 9/11 radically shifted America's role in the world with lasting impacts on international relations and global perceptions of the U.S. that we are still navigating today. So what did this all mean for America's global standing, its alliances, its soft power, and how has that played out on the international stage over these past 2+ decades?
What's truly compelling here, I think, is the ripple effect, the long-term consequences of the post-9/11 foreign policy choices on America's soft power and its overall global standing. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights the complex and often unintended trade-offs between pursuing urgent security imperatives, like counterterrorism, and maintaining international trust, alliance solidarity, and even upholding democratic values and domestic freedoms. These decisions had profound and long-lasting consequences internationally.
Initially, though, the global response to 9/11 demonstrated unprecedented international solidarity. It was quite remarkable. NATO invoked Article 5 of its charter, the Collective Defense Clause, for the first and only time in its history, signifying that an attack on one member, the U.S., was considered an attack on all. Numerous countries around the world offered immediate military assistance, intelligence sharing, and expressions of support. There was a genuine, heartfelt moment of global unity and sympathy directed towards the United States.
However, your sources clearly illustrate that the subsequent decision to invade Iraq in 2003, which was justified partly on flawed intelligence linking Iraq to 9/11 and weapons of mass destruction, severely damaged American credibility and fractured many of those critical alliances that had been so strong right after 9/11. Lawrence Wilkerson, who was Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell at the time, powerfully articulated this shift in your materials. He stated, quote, 9/11 gave us the world's sympathy and support. The Iraq War squandered it. We went from being victims of terrorism to being seen as perpetrators of it by many around the world.
Wow.
This marked a profound and lasting shift in global perception of American foreign policy motives and judgment.
Yeah, the War on Terror, particularly its expansion into Iraq, truly had profound implications for American soft power and international relations. While the initial intervention in Afghanistan garnered broad international support, the Iraq War created lasting divisions with key European allies like France and Germany, as well as with Russia and China. And the ultimate, often chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021 marked the end of America's longest war, but with highly mixed results in terms of achieving its stated long-term counterterrorism and nation-building objectives, leaving behind a very complicated legacy in that region and for U.S. foreign policy overall.
And shifting back domestically for a moment, the expansion of surveillance capabilities and security measures has fundamentally altered American society, as your sources describe in detail. The creation of the massive Department of Homeland Security, DHS, integrating numerous agencies, the enhanced airport security protocols through the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, things that are now just a permanent, familiar, if sometimes annoying, part of everyday travel, and the vastly expanded intelligence gathering powers we discussed earlier. These have all become deeply embedded permanent features of American life. These aren't temporary measures enacted after a crisis. They are now permanent fixtures in our national infrastructure, our laws, and our daily routines.
And it's also crucial, as we touched on, to highlight how these changes have disproportionately affected certain communities, particularly Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, and South Asians. Your material makes it clear they've faced heightened scrutiny through government surveillance programs, inclusion on watch lists, sometimes without due process, and enhanced screening procedures at borders and airports, often leading to widespread feelings of collective suspicion, profiling, and alienation within their own country.
Dalia Mogahed, who is the Director of Research at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, eloquently captured this enduring sentiment in your sources. She stated, quote, 23 years later, American Muslims still live with the legacy of collective suspicion. Airport security, workplace discrimination, FBI surveillance. These became part of daily life for an entire community that had nothing to do with the attacks. This ongoing tension between pursuing national security imperatives and protecting the civil liberties and equal rights of all citizens, and its often uneven application across different communities, remains a defining and often unresolved challenge of the post-9/11 era in America.
So, 24 years on, the landscape of threats, responsibilities, and consequences is undeniably still evolving. It's not static. We're not just looking back at 9/11 as a finished historical event. We're looking ahead at how its incredibly long and complex legacy continues to shape our present and our future, demanding ongoing attention, resources, and adaptation. Let's explore some of these current challenges and future implications.
It's truly compelling how the very nature of the terrorist threat has diversified and become far more complex than it appeared in 2001, demanding an adaptive and nuanced response that needs to move beyond the initial post-9/11 paradigm of fighting a specific group like Al-Qaeda. And this raises an important question for us and for you, our listener, looking forward. How do we effectively balance addressing these new and emerging threats like domestic extremism or cyber threats with the ongoing long-term commitment to those still suffering the consequences of past events, like the 9/11 survivors and responders? How do we allocate resources and attention, upholding our societal obligations on all fronts?
Well, terrorism experts widely argue, based on your sources, that the threat landscape has indeed become significantly more complex and diffuse, as you said. We've witnessed the rise and fall and potential resurgence of ISIS. We've seen the return of the Taliban to power in Afghanistan after the U.S. withdrawal, and we've seen a significant growth of ideologically diverse domestic extremism right here at home, from white supremacists to anti-government militias. These all present new and distinct security challenges compared to what was primarily faced immediately after 9/11, which was focused on foreign jihadist groups.
And the proliferation of social media has played a critical, really a dual role here, acting as an accelerant. On one hand, it has enhanced the recruitment capabilities and propaganda reach for international terrorist groups like residual elements of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. But simultaneously, and perhaps more worryingly for domestic security, it has enabled domestic extremist movements to organize, spread their hateful ideologies, radicalize individuals, and even coordinate actions right within our own borders, often blending online activity with real-world violence. The intersection, the blurring lines between foreign and domestic terrorism threats now represents a particularly significant and complex challenge for contemporary counterterrorism efforts.
Former CIA Director John Brennan summarized this evolution quite well in your materials. He stated, quote, "The terrorism threat today is more diverse and in some ways more dangerous than it was on 9/11. We're dealing with international terrorists, domestic extremists, lone wolves inspired online, and state-sponsored actors all at once. The simple narrative of fighting Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan seems quaint by comparison. It truly highlights how dramatically the battlefield, both physical and ideological, has changed and diversified over the last 2 decades.
And looking ahead specifically at the health legacy, the World Trade Center Health Program faces significant long-term sustainability challenges. Not just financially, although that's always a concern, but also in continuously adapting its medical approach as the affected population inevitably ages and develops additional, potentially late-onset health conditions linked to their exposure. While its funding is commendably secured by law through 2090, the program itself must continuously evolve its protocols, its covered conditions list, and its treatment strategies to meet these shifting medical needs, based on the latest scientific understanding as it emerges.
Yeah, this adaptation is truly crucial. Your sources highlight several current expansion considerations being debated or researched. These include potentially extending benefits for geographic coverage to survivors who lived or worked just outside the immediate ground zero impact zone, but were still demonstrably exposed to the toxic dust cloud as it spread. There are also ongoing discussions and research about adding new health conditions to the covered list, things like certain autoimmune diseases, specific neurological conditions like Parkinsonism, and various rare cancers, as the scientific evidence definitively establishes their causal connections to the 9/11 exposures. That research process takes time.
And researchers are even investigating potential second-generation effects. This is really concerning. They're exploring if there are health impacts on the children of exposed individuals, particularly those conceived or in utero shortly after the attacks. That would represent an entirely new and devastating dimension of the tragedy if confirmed. Furthermore, there's a widely recognized and urgent need for expanding mental health services within the program to address the complex long-term psychological trauma, survivor guilt, depression, anxiety, and the challenges of adapting to chronic illness that many survivors and responders face decades later. Dr. Michael Crane, the medical director of the World Trade Center Health Program Clinic at Mount Sinai, states it plainly. We're learning that 9/11 exposure may have lifelong health consequences we're only beginning to understand. Every year brings new insights into how these toxins affected human health. The program must evolve with this knowledge. It's a testament to the ongoing nature of this medical crisis.
And finally, on the memorial front, the National September 11 Memorial and Museum in New York faces its own unique set of challenges in preserving the memory and history of this ongoing event. They need to physically preserve artifacts, twisted steel, damaged emergency vehicles, personal items, many of which were never intended for long-term preservation and are inherently fragile. That's a huge conservation challenge. And beyond that, they need to maintain relevance and effectively educate future generations who have no direct personal memory of that day or the world before it. It's a delicate balance of conveying history, honoring memory, and fostering understanding.
Their educational mission is particularly sensitive and critical, as your sources detail. The museum must constantly balance historical accuracy and confronting difficult truths with profound sensitivity to the survivors, the victims' families, and the first responders whose experiences are represented there. And at the same time, they have to actively counter the pervasive misinformation and the conspiracy theories we discussed earlier, which unfortunately continue to circulate, especially online. This role becomes even more crucial as personal eyewitness memories of the events inevitably fade with the passage of time. Alice Greenwald, the president and CEO of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, underscores this responsibility clearly. She says, quote, "We have a responsibility to ensure that accurate history survives. As we get further from 2001, we see more young people coming to us who have been exposed to conspiracy theories online. Our role as educators becomes even more critical."
As we near the end of this incredibly comprehensive and, yes, at times, quite heartbreaking deep dive from the Urban Herald team, it feels vital to circle back and hear directly from those who live with the legacy of 9/11 every single day. Their stories are not just a testament to incredible human resilience, but they also represent an ongoing, often exhausting fight for justice, for recognition, and for basic care. So, through their eyes, what does this entire unfolding narrative mean for you, our listener? How should we understand it from their perspective?
Their experiences truly underscore the unwavering advocacy and the immense personal cost borne by those most directly affected by the attacks and their aftermath. Their powerful voices, when we listen, not only shape our collective understanding of the event's true toll, but they also reinforce our societal commitment or challenge us to strengthen it towards truth, towards care, towards remembrance. And this raises a profound question, I think. How do their direct lived experiences remind us constantly of the immense human dimension of this ongoing tragedy? And what ongoing responsibilities do we as a society carry to uphold their fight, honor their sacrifices, and ensure their legacies are not forgotten?
Survivors and first responders continue, even now, to grapple with a myriad of ongoing health challenges, immense financial burdens from lost work and medical bills, and deep, persistent emotional trauma. Your sources make it absolutely clear their fight didn't end when the towers fell or when the pile was cleared. It transformed into a daily struggle for recognition, for benefits, for healthcare, for simple acknowledgement. We have the posthumous testimony of NYPD Detective Luis Alvarez, who, just before his death from 9/11 related cancer in 2019, powerfully testified before Congress, weak but determined. He said, his voice cracking, "I did not want to be anywhere else but ground zero when I was there. You made me come down here the day before I'm supposed to have surgery. I'm sure I'll be fine, but if I'm not, you pulled me away from my family just so I could remind you that this referring to funding the health program should not be a political issue." His words just resonate with such raw emotion and unwavering dedication, even in the face of his own imminent mortality. It was an incredibly powerful moment.
Hmm. And John Fiel, himself a 9/11 first responder who was severely injured during the cleanup and became a tireless advocate, captures the sentiment of so many who feel let down. He stated bluntly, "We've been fighting for our lives and our benefits for over 2 decades. The government told us the air was safe to breathe, and we believed them. Now we're dying, and we have to fight Congress for every dollar of medical care, but we keep fighting because that's what we do." This speaks volumes about the continued arduous battle just to get the care and compensation they were promised, a fight for dignity and survival against bureaucratic hurdles and sometimes political indifference.
Monica Eichen, a survivor whose husband Michael died in the South Tower on 9/11, shares a similar heartbreaking perspective in your materials, focusing on the ongoing nature of the loss. She said, 23 years later, I'm still learning about friends who are getting sick from that toxic dust, people who work downtown, people who live there. The attacks didn't end on September 11th. They're still killing people every single day. That's the story that needs to be told. Her words are such a stark reminder of the long-term, devastating impact that continues to ripple outwards. And when you consider those iconic photographs from the day, like the unforgettable image of Marcy Borders, the Dust Lady, completely covered head to toe in that gray toxic powder after escaping the North Tower, you realize that immediate, shocking impact was just the beginning of a lifetime of health consequences for her and for so many thousands of others. It was a visual prelude to this ongoing health crisis.
Wow. Okay. What an incredibly comprehensive and, yes, at times, really quite heartbreaking deep dive into the legacy of 9/11 we've had today.
From the Urban Herald team, it's abundantly clear, listening to all this, that this story is far, far from over. From the staggering health crisis that continues to unfold and claim lives, to the enduring geopolitical ripples still shaping our world, the constant, necessary battle against misinformation online and off, and the just unwavering resilience of those directly affected. We sincerely hope this conversation has given you, our listener, a deeper, perhaps more nuanced understanding of its complex, ongoing legacy. The story truly continues to be written every day in medical journals, in courtrooms, in classrooms, in policy debates, and in the lives of those still living with its consequences. But before we go,
Yes, this deep dive from the Urban Herald team truly underscores, I believe, that the true measure of resilience perhaps lies not just in preventing future attacks, though that's obviously critical, but it also lies in a sustained, evolving commitment to caring for those who sacrifice their health and lives in response to that tragedy, and in ensuring that accurate history prevails against the persistent tide of misinformation and denial. So as you reflect on everything we've discussed today, perhaps consider what it means for us, individually and collectively, to shoulder the long-term responsibility of such a pivotal ongoing historical event. What actions, if any, does this deeper understanding compel you to take? Or maybe, what further questions does it inspire you to ask next as this unfinished story continues?